A skyrocketing unemployment rate in a community bursting at the seams with new growth.
Our population continues to grow, and our income, our sales tax income, and the things that we measure as far as growth continue to increase year over year.
Yuma, Arizona in the national spotlight yet again for having the highest number of unemployed men and women. But local leaders say those numbers are far from the truth.
They will not reveal how many interviews actually take place, confidentiality and all that. So the numbers get a little bit wacko.
On the road in the western edge of the state, this is Arizona Week. Welcome to Yuma, Arizona, a place rich in geography and history like the Yuma Territorial Prison. Yuma also sits along the Colorado River, and that makes this the perfect place for agriculture. So much so, it's the leading industry. Yuma's also near the Mexican border. That means migrant farm workers and seasonal unemployment. And for those reasons, the Bureau of Labor Statistics say 30% of the men and women in this town are unemployed. But local leaders say those numbers just don't add up. Julie Engel, President and CEO of the Greater Yuma Economic Development Corporation. How would you describe Yuma's economy?
Yuma's economy is primarily three base industries driving our economy, and that is agriculture, the military, and tourism. Now, we do have a fourth that is manufacturing, but it's a new industry base, and so it's still growing, whereas agriculture is a mature base, tourism's mature. Our military continues to grow as well. That one is in a growth mode as well. So our economy is very stable and strong.
So the unemployment numbers have come out, and it paints a somewhat negative picture.
Yes, it does.
Are those numbers accurate, or where are they skewed?
They are skewed for several reasons. We are a transitory environment with our military, so there's people coming and going as they transition. They usually do 3 years in one location and exit out, and there's a new group that comes in. And so it looks like job loss when they leave, but a lot of times it's backfilled with another military person in the civilian side. And then we also have our agriculture, which is seasonal. We also have retail and hospitality that is seasonal because of our climate. We have 100,000 winter visitors annually that come into this region, but they are here from October through March, sometimes April, and then they leave, so then we start downsizing. Our medical, our retail and hospitality all have to ramp up for that season, and then they downsize.
When the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out these numbers, these figures, what does that do to you, the reputation of this community, and what the message you're trying to get across to bring industry into this community?
I honestly can't speak to how it's viewed from the outside. I do know that it hasn't reduced the amount of interest in this community when it comes to industries who are looking at us for a place to locate business. It's a question they ask. The first thing they say is, this an accurate number? And we say no. And we can support that answer with, evidence. And so we are also asked often, are people leaving? Are you shrinking? And the answer to that is no as well. Our population continues to grow, and our income, our sales tax income, and the things that we measure as far as growth continue to increase year over year.
How does the migrant population play a factor in these numbers that you get, that the state gets, that goes over that national picture?
As I was saying, we have these industries that ramp up in the winter and then they decrease in the summer. And the unemployment tracking is a bit disjointed. States don't talk to each other, and countries definitely don't talk to each other. So we have a community the size of 25,000 people. Their population in the 2010 census was 25,000. They have over 100,000 post office boxes in their post office. And that's where people collect their unemployment checks from Mexico. And then the people who leave here in the agriculture and go work in Salinas can draw unemployment in Arizona, but they are working in Salinas. And vice versa, they do the same thing because Salinas sees a big bump during our winter months when they're over here. Then Salinas' unemployment goes up because they can draw unemployment on California even though they're working. So there is a lack of communication. And then we also have people who, because we're so close to California and things like that, when they do work during the hospitality season and things like that, they can then go and draw unemployment somewhere else. We have our medical profession. We have traveling seasonal medical workers. Not so much. We used to really have a lot of seasonal medical workers. When they left, they were able to draw unemployment as well.
I think a lot of people would describe that as a scam.
I've described it as fraud. I've encouraged our local news and our reporters to launch an investigative report on this. Try and get to the bottom of it. And it's more sensational to just report the number.
That creates a problem, though, when you're trying to recruit business here, or business looks at that number and think, oh, nearly 40% of the people there don't work. I won't be able to recruit a workforce here. How are you able to tell them that that's not necessarily the accurate picture? Let me show you what we are doing here instead.
Well, and we do have a lot of support information to back up that claim that won't be the case, but we actually have our plant managers, or depending on what industry they're coming from, we let them tell the story. So we have one-on-one meetings with our local plant managers who talk about the workforce and talk about the availability, the skill set, and the attributes, because all of the manufacturing companies that are here just praise this workforce as being the best. And we have Johnson Controls, who is located here. This plant, 3 consecutive years in a row, has been ranked the highest performing plant within the Johnson Controls battery division for the world, because they have battery divisions all over the world, and this has been the highest ranking one for the world. And they attribute that solely to the workforce, the quality that they find here.
The state economists have said that Yuma has its challenges, but there are the opportunities here. What are those opportunities?
The opportunities are our resources. We're rich in natural resources. We have a lot of water. We have a lot of land. Some of it is state and federally owned, but we do have a lot of land. And then our location. We are the other 4 corners, you could say, because we border 2 states in Mexico, and we border California. And Yuma is the closest location to the metropolitan areas in California that are conducive to the transportation of goods in and out of the country. So if you're in Yuma, you're closer than if you were in Phoenix, and if you're in Tucson, Vegas, Kingman, any of those locations, Yuma has direct access. We are close enough that you can do a trip to Los Angeles and back in one day, so it's considered a short haul. It doesn't require a long haul driver. It doesn't require all the logs and the tracking that is by law if they go beyond that distance. So we're fortunate in that respect. We have a foreign trade zone that makes us very attractive, and our partners in Mexico, we work seamlessly with our partners in Mexico. It really is a seamless border. The movement of people and commerce is constant.
So the overall picture, regardless of what newspaper, how big the newspaper is circulated across the country, the picture from you who lives here, who breathes it, you know that it's a good place to be. It's healthy.
Absolutely. It's a very strong economy. And we were late into the recession because agriculture did buffer us. It did buffer us. But we've also been the last to come out of the recession. So last in, last out of the recession. Statistics do indicate that Yuma is seeing growth in all of our economic drivers. And so if you went on the street and just did random surveys, I think you would hear consumer confidence is still a little shaken. And that is because the government is such a large employer here. And when the government shut down and then they went through sequestration, several people had to change their spending habits significantly because of those 2 things. And so we're seeing that consumer confidence isn't quite what it could be, but it was pretty disruptive when sequestration and the shutdown happened. We have several acquaintances and people that we track through business retention surveys that realized a greater than $10,000 a year cut in their pay from the sequestration. So that's discretionary funding right off the top.
It sounds to me, and it looks like, Yuma is growing.
It is.
You would agree?
We continue, the whole region, the whole MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, is growing. All of the communities within this region are growing.
El Centro, California is about an hour west of Yuma. It's listed as having the nation's second highest unemployment rate at 27%. Like Yuma, its leading industry is agriculture. And Yuma's unemployment numbers have always fluctuated. For example, the state of Arizona recorded a 40% unemployment rate in the late summer of 1994. At its lowest, just an 8% unemployment rate in February of 2007. And for the month of this past January, 23%. It's estimated 50,000 men and women work in the fields, the majority of them migrant farm workers from Mexico. And as you're about to hear, though it is not easy work, it has provided a living for families on either side of the border. Ruben Reyes is a retired field worker who lives in Somerton, Arizona. He retired after picking produce for 47 years.
I work in the fields, picking lettuce, melons, asparagus, carrots, all different types of work in the field.
Ruben tells me the work was not hard when he was young, but it was tough on his family, who followed him to other states.
Work never ends. Since we were immigrant workers, we would move where the jobs were. From here to Texas, to Colorado, to New Mexico and Arizona. Work never ends when you chase it.
Looking back, the 74-year-old says field work provided a good income and offered job security, which meant stability for his family. But it's not a life he wanted for his children.
It's because you need to adjust to what you earn. You can spend more than what you have. We're not people who like the credit program. Yes, a little credit in the house and in the car, but we moved forward with our kids in the university with their scholarships. They also started working at a very young age, and we pushed them in their studies so they could be prepared, because in the fields, there's no future.
Ruben says this type of work will always be a part of this country's workforce.
We are always needed by the ranchers, but they didn't always like us. But they need us. Labor work is always needed, and it's a shame for those of us who are not prepared in another career.
In between the harvest, it's not uncommon for workers to leave the state to find other work, but there are those who stay in Yuma and find other types of jobs. For them, there are groups that counsel and guide those efforts. Here now is John Morales, the Executive Director of the Yuma Private Industry Council.
What happens in a seasonal economy is that the difference between the labor market here in Yuma, where you have a heavy population, and the agricultural season and the seasonality of all of that, what happens, in fact, is we have two distinct labor markets. But we're treated as one by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they will not change their formula, and they will not reveal how many interviews actually take place, confidentiality and all that. So the numbers get a little bit wacko, and there would be people in the metro areas that are saying that those numbers aren't relevant. But when you look at the totality of the issues that I just outlined, there's some real problems here. The other one is a social context. If you have been socialized and you've come from Mexico, you've been socialized to live or work seasonally, and then there's this great benefit to get unemployment insurance for an extended period of time, that kind of gets ingrained into the culture. And the folks have been doing this kind of labor stuff for a long time. So there's all kinds of side issues to that.
John, how many people does this facility service every year?
We serve anywhere between 26 to 30,000 people that come through our doors. That doesn't mean that every one of them is involved in a training thing, but because of the different levels of service we offer under the Workforce Investment Act, some people will get the low impact services. Some people come in here, and what we try to encourage them to do is to use this as your office while you're, in pursuit of a job. Because when you start moving away from the low impact, low cost services to the intensive services and to the training services, the costs go up. So we don't have the budget to train everyone that comes in the door. So what we try to do is do what we can in almost a triage fashion to figure out who needs the most help and how can we move you through the system faster so you can get that help.
And you see a fair amount of agricultural workers who come through your doors?
Yes, we do. We also have an office, a branch office, smaller site, satellite in Somerton, Arizona. And the reason we placed it there is we're closer to the heart of the problem for agricultural workers. And what we try to do is to be a resource for other agencies because we're all in this together.
The people who are working in the fields, oftentimes, the majority of the time, speak Spanish proficiently, English not well enough. So what sorts of jobs are you trying to help pair them with?
Well, those are the big problems right there is there's a limit to what kinds of jobs they can get. And normally, if you look at across the economic spectrum, most people who have limited English-speaking abilities usually are the ones that end up in the back areas of restaurants and in the kitchen and dishwater. Not that they can't perform duties. It's just that they don't have the skills or the socialization to be out front and be representing. Now I'm making a sweeping generalization there. It doesn't mean that all of these folks are like that. But a majority of the folks that we run into that have come out of the ag industry and or other industries here have a fairly low skill level. So in a technologically driven world, which we are now, where you have to have some level of computer skills, we've got some problems because I mentioned educational attainment. About 28% of working age adults in Yuma County have a high school education.
So what is your message to people who come in here and say, the season just ended, I don't want to leave, I have my family here, my children are here, and I want to do this, but language is an issue, or living in this society. So how do you encourage them? What direction?
Well, we try to refer them to agencies that we have contracts with that will teach English as a second language, whether it's at the college or there's another literacy agency in the community. And then we also try to, give them some idea of what they're going to be facing in the job market and how to overcome those barriers. We have different workshops that we give, and we have something called a job club, where the folks get together, and it's almost like a support group because we're sending them out into the field and saying, go out and try to find some job leads. And they may come back with 3 job leads. None of the job leads maybe would fit them, but they're giving them to their friends. And so there's an awful lot of encouragement going on. And what we're really looking for is to try to give them a sense of empowerment and a sense of self-efficacy, because they have to believe in their own competencies and their own spirit to get out there, because it's a tough competitive world. When you have a surplus labor situation, you have a limited labor market, those kinds of things interact and cause a lot of problems. I think the thing we're trying to do most of anything is to give people a sense of hope.
Yuma is considered the winter lettuce capital of the world, producing 90% of this country's lettuce. Here it's proudly referred to as agribusiness, and it's what keeps this town thriving. Linda Morgan, the Executive Director of the Visitors Bureau here in Yuma. Where are we sitting outside of here?
We are sitting outside at the Quartermaster Depot State Historic Park. It is a park that was very important to military history in the early days. Right out here was the only place that you could cross the Colorado River because of the granite outcropping. And so it was very important. History-wise, the The military has been here. Bureau of Reclamation, when they started the Siphon Project, which was the series of canals that's still used today, same technology, right here.
So tourism is a big industry here. Agriculture is as well. You mentioned the military earlier. Can you describe how significant that agriculture impact is to this area?
Agriculture is huge. It's our #1 industry, and all the agriculture and agriculture-related businesses form a very healthy portion of our economy. And it's largely due to the Colorado River, which provides the irrigation, but also just very fertile land it was actually formed because of the sediment that was formed when the Grand Canyon was sort of dug out. It sort of came downhill and it settled in this Yuma Valley. It's been an agriculture community for years and years, and it still is today. We are the winter vegetable capital of North America, and if you're in New York and you eat salad, there's a 95% chance that that lettuce came right out of the fields here in Yuma.
You also have the tourism, you have the snowbirds, people who come from back east, the Midwest, to enjoy the weather. We've talked about the fact that these unemployment reports come out and they portray this city in a negative light. How do you stress to people that, you know, this is a great place to be? The snowbirds are proving it. They're coming, they're spending their money. What is that challenge like for you in kind of painting a prettier picture to the public?
Every time those statistics come out, we do get calls from all over the U.S. because reporters want to know what it's like here in what they perceive to be a very depressed economy. And it's truly not that in any shape or form. Just as you mentioned, we have visitors from Mexico because of our close proximity to Mexico. We have the winter visitors. We have the military and all that entails as far as business and industry that's related to that, as well as the agriculture. We also have a fairly large manufacturing base that is growing. So we have actually, one of the things that makes us attractive to new business is our labor force. And so it's definitely not a depressed economy. You know, sometimes people want to paint us with tumbleweeds rolling in the streets, and it's definitely not that. When people get off of the interstate and they stop in Yuma, they are always amazed.
You said that the growers they're a huge part of this community. They're part of the history and the future picture moving forward. I mean, it's not going anywhere, this industry.
Right. It's changed a little bit in that, you know, the technology that they use and that sort of thing, but it's the soil, it's the climate, it's weather dependent, and it's a lot of hard work.
And of course, the climate is a big deal here. You boast the, 350 days of sunshine a year?
We do. Actually, the Visitors Bureau did a campaign for the centennial, the Arizona State Centennial, 2 years ago, where we offered free meal every day that the sun didn't shine for 15 minutes. And we never gave away a meal.
You also have a handful of high schools, which means that families are moving here. They're having children.
Right.
Children are going to school. I mean, this is a place where people want to raise a family.
Right. It's a great place to raise a family. It really is. It's good schools. And we have a community college, and we have NAU Yuma campus here. And so there's lots of education. We work very closely with Arizona Western College to develop programs that the businesses need. So if the business community recognizes a need for a certain training or certification, then Arizona Western College will develop that certification program and make it available. Okay. I've lived other places, and one of the things that has just really impressed me about Yuma is that everybody works together. And I know I go to a lot of other places and sit in rooms where other communities don't have that, and they're envious of it. But you know, our Chamber of Commerce, our Tourism Bureau, our Economic Development, Workforce Development, even our media partners, I mean, everybody works together to make this a great place to live, and it's a real joy to be a part of it.
And that's our program. For all of us at Arizona Week, I'm Lorraine Rivera. We'll send it back to the studio for The Buzz with my colleague, Christopher Conover.
Thanks, Lorraine. Hello, everyone. The buzz around Arizona's capital this week was the state budget. The Senate passed a spending plan written by Senate President Andy Biggs. The 8 bills making up the budget initially were not in line with the fiscal plan outlined by Governor Jan Brewer earlier this year. But Biggs added money and brought the budget closer to the governor's request. The Senate spending proposal now includes $160 million new dollars for K-12 education and an additional $118 million for the Department of Economic Security. Now, part of that money will go to create a new standalone agency to replace the current Child Protective Services. The money added by Biggs brings the Senate's budget closer in line with what the governor wants, but her exact requests were not met. One of the big sticking points is the revamped CPS. Governor Brewer wants $80 million for that and more caseworkers. Broken down, she asked for $25 million to start the new agency. Biggs originally earmarked far less, but brought the figure up to $20 million. Brewer also wants $21.5 million to hire more caseworkers. Biggs again came in low, but increased his chamber's budget to $15.3 million. The governor is seeking a little more than $5 million for adult protective services. Biggs agreed to $3 million. The spending for CPS could become a major sticking point in legislative negotiations with the governor's office, because if CPS is not on the road to repair, Brewer's legacy would most likely include that as a job unfinished. Education funding is also expected to be a contentious point with her. Her main push is funding for the Common Core assessment. The governor wants $13.5 million. Biggs, after speaking with the governor's office, came up to $8 million. On Monday, the House will take up its version of the budget in committee and on the floor. Right now, those bills are different from the ones passed by the Senate, something that must be reconciled before the two chambers can send anything to the governor for her signature or veto. We'll bring you those details next week. And that's the buzz from the state capitol. And that's also our show. Lorraine Rivera will be in Nogales next week. Thanks for watching.